Welcome back to yet another episode of the CryptoNoobz podcast, where we talk about cryptocurrency for beginners. I am your host, nelsonrecardo.x.
Lamont Astwood, aka Crypto Lambo.
And on this episode, we're going to be interviewing none other than Stefen Deleveaux, a pioneer within the space, a blockchain ecosystem builder, and someone who's been inside the space almost since inception. How are you doing, Stefan?
I'm doing good. I'm definitely good. It's going to be an interesting year for sure, but I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. So, Stefan, we just got you right after a particular event, an event that I've seen that you've been having for a few years now, something called Oasis on Chain, right? And I just wanted to let the viewers know about this event. So I want you to explain what is Oasis on Chain and how is it affecting the crypto space?
For sure. So Oasis on Chain is a conference series that I started actually a year ago. So the first one was in 2024. Second one was, as you said, it just happened about a month ago, give or take. But honestly, the idea for it was, to be honest, really to be kind of a counter to the narratives that were happening at the time, which were basically, we got to say it, post FTX, any kind of interest in the Bahamas was kind of surrounding that. And obviously they had a conference as well. So this was really, the idea was to kind of be a counter to that, just to show that, there's a lot happening here still in the Bahamas, in the crypto space, outside of all of that.
For sure.
And to also show that it's different in the sense of it's not someone coming down and bringing stuff and then trying to create an ecosystem out of that. It's native, it's Bahamian born, Bahamian bred. We're building our own ecosystems, our own communities, and we could still create hype or just bring in good people, bring in good builders all the same without the need for someone else coming and creating something. And in addition to that, y'all know I've been in the space for way too long, but I've typically worked around, through the Caribbean blockchain lines around education. And education is very useful in the space, but I also wanted to do something different where, especially now in these days, interacting with crypto is actually a lot easier because of a lot of different, let's call them upgrades for lack of a better word, than it was even just like 2-3 years ago. So I wanted to kind of highlight that and bring new people in a way that's not focused so much on education, but more on actual access and kind of even consumer interactions that show how easy it can be. So really those two things are what pushed me to create this. And at the same time, because I'm always at different conferences, I'm always at different events globally, it was really one of the conferences in Paris and then one of the conferences in LA that really gave me a lot of insight and ideas into how to even just do a conference and not make it stuffy. You know what I mean? How to make it very casual while still very impactful at the end of the day. And again, focusing on the very accessible and easy to learn. So the first one, Nelson, you were there. First one went really well, and it was cool to see the kind of interaction of, thankfully, I'm able to bring in folks from like the US, the UK, et cetera. So it was cool to see them come here and also interact with Bahamians in a way that isn't extractive, right? In a way that's actual like networking and like community building.
Very
and people,
reciprocal.
exactly. And people are coming here not just to say, oh, I'm in the Bahamas and then leave. They actually are interested in what is happening here and what could be built here as well. So that's kind of the short version, but that's basically what the goal of Oasis on Chain is at the end of the day.
So one of the things that I really loved, and just as you said, I was actually there to the first Oasis on Chain. I can definitely say that there were many networking opportunities. Many of the guests I still keep in contact with today. And I remember some of the things that we did. There were these workshops where we would build ideas, and
Right.
we would actually be paired up with something that you don't know. You don't know these people, but you are paired up with them and you have to kind of create these ideas that are actually functional. And it was such an amalgamation, great minds coming together. But inside, just as you said, not a stuffy way. It was like, hey, like we could talk, it's like we could relax, we could kick up our sandals and we could just speak our minds, give these ideas and see how we could actually help one another. And what I found so really interesting about it was that everyone was so kind and relaxed. It was a
Yeah.
more of an intimate feel. Definitely being in the Bahamas, you were able to talk about blockchain and the ecosystem and Web3 while sipping on a daiquiri, probably a little bit of rum and probably some conference, And
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
just a little bit, And definitely, I really want to speak towards like how you are behaving in the space doing this. Um, the Bahamas was, I would say that we are one of the leading countries that are within the crypto space. We actually have our own
Yeah.
regulations. We were actually the first one to drop our central bank digital currency. So definitely we were at forefront of everything. But one of the things that I really want to see more of inside the Bahamas is actually like us like trying to build more of the ecosystem around cryptocurrency. And I just love the fact that we have a Bahamian brethren who's here and actually putting in that work, doing it, like bringing people over here to see what it is that the Bahamas has to offer.
Yeah.
But that brings me to my next question. So what were you doing before you got into the crypto space? How was life before that, and what made you want to enter this space?
Yeah, and I appreciate all that, man, because it's like all this is really just to empower Bahamians at the end of the day. That's kind of what I've always wanted to do. Before that, I mean, so I can go way back, but my background is in economics. I've kind of worked in and around different areas of like policy, finance, things like that. And I want to say maybe like maybe 2011, 2012, I was really interested I started being interested in tech, but I got really interested in fintech because I saw that as kind of a great kind of departure from finance, from traditional finance as it is in a more accessible way. So I got really excited about the things that were coming out of the fintech space. But I also realized very quickly that it was, because I mean, people frame the narrative as it's different from traditional finance and a lot more people can access it, which was somewhat true. But I also realized very quickly that for the most part, it wasn't true. In the Bahamas, we still have no access to like, name it, Venmo, Cash App,
Right.
Stripe, like for the most part, like all of those things. And all these new, even like Lending Club and things like that were seen as like the most important products or apps in fintech, we had no access to them whatsoever. So very quickly that kind of killed my excitement. And then between then and a few years later, I kind of kept up with crypto in the sense of like I was paying attention to it, but I didn't really see where we fit in specifically. And even myself, because I wasn't like a developer, right? But when I started to actually dive into blockchain and the actual technology and what it could do and what it was like, how it was built and all that, that's when I really, I guess you could say, got the aha moment. That's when I realized, oh, this is what I've been looking for this whole time, because it's, it is actually completely different, completely separate for the most part. No, it's a separate economic system, is a separate financial system, and it's global by default, which means that you didn't have to be stuck necessarily in the like US banking system or like the Western banking and financial system like we kind of typically are. Because even, if you send a wire anywhere in the world, it goes through New York first. So I saw this as, kind of a way that the Bahamas and the Caribbean in general could kind of create its own ecosystem, kind of create its own like financial structures in a really cool way. And of course, that was early on. There's still a long way to go in actually making a lot of that an accessible reality. But we're getting there. But yes, slowly but surely. But honestly, ever since then, I was like, this is actually what I want to dedicate. I won't say my life, but I want to dedicate a lot of time to, maybe even dedicate the rest of my career to. So that's kind of what I did. So very quickly after that, I kind of got in touch with some other folks in the region who were already like doing a lot in the space. We started Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. And that was focused mainly on just advocating for blockchain and the use of blockchain tech. And of course, education. So we did a number of like workshops, webinars, things like that. You can still check out and access a few small like courses and things like that. And we did that in a very regional way. It was always, it was never like some giant thing, but there definitely was impact. And people started paying more attention. And I think, even between then, which was like maybe end of 2016 to now, so much has happened. But yeah, it was kind of a very gradual, not really gradual, I got to that point of understanding, and then I just went full force into it.
I just like how you touch on inside of the Caribbean, we have so many limitations when it comes to money and money transfers. There are so many of us that are actually trying to work on solving that issue right now, especially because of in the more Western countries already that have that. Like Cash App would be huge in the Bahamas, just being able to send that money so quickly. Once again, you have the solid dollar, but it's still catching on. Cryptocurrency is something that is allowing that door to be open, as well as blockchain technology. Next, one of the things that I want to know is, now you initially said that you were, I remember reading this on your LinkedIn, right? An ecosystem builder and a community builder. Could you tell us what does that mean to be a blockchain ecosystem builder and a community builder? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think, and the funny thing about titles is they always mean different things to different people. But I think community builder, it does kind of mean the same thing for the most part, no matter which industry you're in, no matter what like sector you're in. And that's more so just bringing people together in a way that's centered around one particular thing. So for example, Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, right? That was, it was an organization, but it was also a community. It was people coming together to either push education or push just different forms of advocacy through committees or things like that. So that's one example. And even outside of that, like I've done work in like DAOs, for example, which are focused on communities and focus on ways to bring people into communities or strengthen their relationships around those communities. And the interesting thing is each time there is tech in the middle of all that, or at the very least, the concept of tech in the middle, where again, either we're using a specific kind of tech to create these communities or to strengthen these communities, or they're coalescing around this idea that is tech-based. So that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah. I actually really like what you touched on as far as like limitations. Is I come from a traditional finance background. And one of the things that drew me to crypto was I would always see news of like stocks and bonds away. Bahamians don't really have as much ready access to it. So when I started learning about crypto, it's like I could literally just sign up for this thing online and access to crypto. And I think that's the reason why you see a lot of people, especially like developing countries, gravitate towards crypto and alternative assets, is because you see now it's easier for them to access opportunities. You know? So like you will have the judgment from one side, like, it's very high risk, high volatile. That's very true. But you have to understand a lot of people are trying to invest who live in countries where they don't have as ready access to financial markets like the United States, the UK, Canada.
Yeah.
They're going to go where the opportunities are, and that's one of the things where you see fintech and crypto kind of the space that filled. So yeah, I really understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think that's like one of the most important things. And you could kind of extrapolate that to not just like assets, but the so many other things you could do with the tech, but even just for so many people around the world, think of folks in like Africa and like the Middle East, and especially like sub-Saharan Africa, for example. It's just having one person or having just like a group of people automatically with like one click of a button have access to to like a global market that they didn't have access to before, where before they were kind of stuck within their borders. Maybe they, like us, we don't have a lot of access to a lot of things. It's game changing. It's life changing for a lot of people. And it's funny too, because I mean, right now there's so many different like tokens and coins and all that stuff. And that is still separate from a lot of like, Microsoft stock, for example. But there's ways to access that. And I think, especially now, given that like even some of the like BlackRock and JP Morgan, and they are very interested in these kind of like quote unquote real world assets, these kind of the ways that you can like tokenize stocks and things like that. I think there's going to be a huge push, and that could lead to, I mean, we'll see how it happens, but between that and between like other approaches is going to be through blockchain, there's going to be a lot of ways that people can kind of invest in stocks and bonds, for example, all over the world for many different countries. And then again, that's a huge game changer for access. And even looking at, I probably won't go into things like, I mean, supply chain and all that kind of stuff, but there's so many different aspects of blockchain that we and so many other folks could use to just kind of change everything.
I want to take it back to the Oasis chain. summit for a moment. So what I would want to know is like, what are some of the key topics that would discuss? Like, what are some of the more popular topics that people want to know within the crypto space?
Yeah, I mean, and again, access is easily the biggest. But what's interesting is kind of the difference between the first and the second one. It's still largely the same, but the first one was definitely a lot more focused on consumer. So consumer crypto could be, and because it's still fairly a new category, people kind of describe it differently. I typically define it as, adding crypto, adding blockchain tech to the things that people are already doing, like payments, which is obvious. Payments are already a big part of crypto, but it could also be social media. It could be media in general, like content creation and things like that, gaming and all these things that are consumer focused, like retail even. So that definitely took up a big chunk of what we focus on and what we talked about in the first one. Like, for example, Nelson, you remember Winnie, who's building Chipped, which is so wild. It's literally like these press on, it's like a whole brand. It's a whole like product. It's these press on nails that have a little QR code inside it that's connected to a chain, a blockchain. And if you tap it with your phone, for example, you could bring up like your social media. You could bring up like basically, like your business card or something like that. And that I think is a really good example of like consumer crypto where the blockchain aspect, the crypto aspect isn't in your face. You don't even necessarily think about it, but it adds so much utility and so much value to what you're doing in a way that's, again, like accessible and sometimes even fun, right? And there's so many different like focuses on that. So for example, you have like different types of social media, like Farcaster or Lens, for example, that are maybe very similar to Twitter or very similar to like Instagram, but they're more decentralized, meaning that, one company, just like Facebook or Twitter, for example, they don't have full control over all of your data. Sorry, like obviously those do, but like the decentralized alternatives, they don't have full control over all your data, for example. Mm-hmm. And that opens so many different just kinds of interactions. And then we actually live streamed on this app called Unlonely, which is again like a kind of more decentralized kind of video streaming platform. And it's interesting because then you could add different kind of incentives. You could add like token interactions as well. It's just like a lot of really interesting stuff that again is like, it's not in your face. You don't even necessarily have to think of it as something different, but there are different features that add to it automatically because it's on chain, as we say. And then in the Oasis that just passed, we still had a consumer focus, especially with payments, but we also talked a lot more about, I guess you could put it under what's now, I don't know how I feel about the name, but people call it DPIN, which is basically just decentralized physical infrastructure. And that could be, it's actually even newer. There's still a lot of stuff being built around that. But you could have, for example, different types of like Wi-Fi interactions or like mesh networks where you can get access to the internet. And there's like an on-chain, like maybe you're being incentivized by being paid with some kind of coin to actually like share or broadcast your own kind of like, it's kind of like, honestly, you could think of it as like a larger scale hotspot, but instead of just, doing it for a friend, you could do it for a larger group of people. And that could connect to other people doing the same kind of hotspot interaction. Now you're building a network and you're also getting paid for basically offering a service at the same time. And one of the companies that came down, they're called Parable. They're doing something around that specifically for Wi-Fi and mesh networks, also for electricity. But that one's a bit farther off. But obviously people are typically aware of like microgrids, for example, which the Bahamas is starting to focus on a bit more, where you can kind of, again, build these kind of networks that share electricity, and you kind of share that electricity, or at least those interactions around electricity through blockchains. So it's like, if we live in the same neighborhood and we all have like solar panels and batteries and stuff like that, but I have less solar panels and you have a lot more, I can actually borrow some of your electricity through the microgrid.
I think we love that.
And I do remember, I'm not sure where it's at now, but there is or was a project in Ragged Island that was happening. I need to see where that is, because I remember that launched, but that's something that could happen on a larger scale. And then like I would pay you for using some of your electricity again through tokens, and that just allows it to be very easy. Like I don't have to go to your house and give you cash. I could just do a really quick transaction that happens automatically. And I think that's one of the the cooler interactions in that these things can happen automatically rather than me having to worry about like, oh, did I do that? Oh, did I forget? So that it's a lot. It's a whole other rabbit hole, but there's really interesting stuff that people are interested in and focusing on. And I think right now, making sure like those have a lot of value or potential value for the Bahamas. And I think making sure we're focusing more on that is going to be really valuable. So actually the next Oasis, which I've already decided is going to happen.
All right. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first.
Heard it first.
Exclusive.
I think that, there you go. I think that physical infrastructure aspect is going to be of heavy importance while still making sure the consumer stuff and the payment stuff is still of value there as well. Because I mean, payments and ease of payments and just making sure we can send money to each other extremely easily, even without access to a bank account, that's still hugely important.
So I just think that was so much that you enlightened us about. So now we actually can have it where like I have a hotspot. My friend may not have a hotspot, right? But basically this mesh network is where all these different phones just are able to connect to each other so that they could actually be able to connect or not. But another thing that I'd like to know is with all these amazing technological advances in the smart, I want your personal opinion on this, right? So the theory is that when it comes to crypto, much of it is not going to be, the things that we're going to be doing isn't really going to be as technical as it sounds right now, right? Eventually, we're going to reach a place where we're going to be using it day to day. We're only going to be talking about just the results that it gives. And it's not going to be so much like, we're hearing about blockchain and the various cryptocurrencies. I remember your first Oasis, a company Beam came. And what I liked about Beam is that they had their crypto wallet. Their crypto wallet didn't specify which cryptocurrencies was in it or anything like that, but you were still able to transact with it, but it would show the dollar amount that is within the wallet. What I want your opinion is, do you think that crypto is going to reach a place where I think when it goes mainstream, right? Do you think when it goes mainstream, it's going to reach a place where people are not going to worry so much about the technical know-hows of it, but it's going to be so simplistic that we'll be using it every day. But we're not going to know that we're using it. Like, do you think that it's going to hit that place?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're going to get there extremely soon, to be honest. So for example, like the Beam wallet, which you mentioned, they did it in a way that for those of you who have interacted with, who like really interacted with crypto, you have stuff in your wallet. It's all kind of delineated into whatever coin or whatnot that you've maybe bought or was given or whatever. And you do have to interact with each of those separately, right? Especially don't let it be on different chains. Then that's a whole like bridging thing you have to deal with. And with Beam wallet, for example, like let's say I have, it's all ETH L2s. But let's say I have like USDC on Base, USDC on Optimism, USDC on Arbitrum. On a normal wallet, as they have typically been, I'd have to interact with all of those differently, even though they're all USDC, like the main one of the main USD stablecoins. There are wallets such as Beam that are now abstracting that. So because they're all the same coin at the end of the day, I can use it together and not have to deal with them separately. And I think that's going to be like, I've already seen a lot of wallet companies or wallet providers focusing on that right now. But even beyond that, and Beam, for example, because they're actually focusing less on that wallet now and more on like a protocol underneath. I don't get into that, but it's interesting to see. Yeah. Just this focus on making those aspects so much easier. And honestly, it's very overdue because most wallets kind of suck. Let's be real. So yeah, I think there's a lot of focus right now on making sure that, that those kind of interactions are easier and making sure that if I have something in my wallet, I can use it no matter where I am, and making sure that all these things can connect a lot better. Like there's a huge focus on interoperability as a whole right now. And I feel like a proper kind of elaboration on that is not far off. I'd say maybe give it a year or so, and then we'll see a lot, not even that long, but let's say give or take a year. It'll be so much easier to interact that way. But I think those will also come from like the Beam wallets, like the newer wallets rather than the older ones.
Yeah, nothing. You guys are really carrying it well. I really love like the insight. I'm just learning a lot about these Beam wallets and stuff. But yeah, I really want us to get to a space where my crypto wallet, because as far as sending money back and forth, crypto, in my opinion, is much more efficient than the banks. Because if you're trying to send money overseas, stuff like that, you have to
Yeah.
do like wires, you deal with international banking and all that. Whereas with crypto, it's
Right.
like a snap of a finger. So I want to get to the place where I'm able to make day-to-day purchases using my crypto. I want it to
Yeah.
be that level. So yeah, man.
Yeah. I think, and for those who are in finance like you, I think people, like even for me, that was one of the biggest kind of insights even early on when I was learning about blockchain, in the sense of, you know, when you work in a bank, whether it's a commercial bank or an investment bank, every time there's a transaction or a payment or investment, no matter what, the person's making that and they see it as being done. But in the background, there's a whole bunch
Still
of
a process
people
going on.
doing all these processes, all the settlements and all that. And that takes a while, which is why you may see like a credit card payment may be done as soon as you do it, but it's not actually done. It takes a whole process after that. And then you'll see like things need to get cleared, things need to get settled. That might take a couple of days, that might take a week. And when I remember learning for the first time that like with a blockchain transaction, the payment is the settlement and it's all at the same time. It's all the same thing. My mind was blown. And I was like, this is so much easier. It's like taking a chunk out of a process and completely removing it.
Yeah.
And now it's from, instead of going from, you know, A to B to C to D all the way to Z, now I'm just going from A to Z like that. So yeah, I mean, I think like just what you mentioned, that's one of my I guess coolest things I think about it.
So one of the things that I need to stop saying the word. Yeah. So tell us, what are some of the emerging tech trends that you're seeing happening in this space that you think are going to be? What tech trend do you think is going to be the biggest tech trend for this year, 2025?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some elements of everything that we kind of already talked about are definitely going to be a big focus. Like easier payments, stablecoins for sure. Like there's going to be so much focus on stablecoins, especially now that they're getting a lot more, I guess, respect from traditional finance. Like more banks are trying to interact with stablecoins. More like Stripe just bought a stablecoin company. That was all the rage. So I think there's now like a huge kind of focus on, and people trying to understand stablecoins more, people trying to implement stablecoins more. So I think that's going to be massive for everybody at the end of the day, because I think the more stablecoins that we have access to, and hopefully I hope we get to the point where, you know, our local fintech companies are implementing stablecoins and building stablecoins. So stablecoins for sure. I think again, like the physical infrastructure stuff, that's still going to be more of a slow rollout, but I think there's going to be pockets where you see some kind of big outbreak. That's not the like breakthrough, rather.
Yeah,
on that point.
Word using right now.
That's you're right, because everybody breakthrough. There you go. So those for sure. And I think those are going to be the main impact. And I think that also maybe a little less impactful, but this kind of combination of crypto and AI agents is going to be really interesting as well, in the sense that, you know, the LLMs, like the ChatGPTs, the DeepSeeks and all that, they're getting to this point where you can use them a bit more personally. Like you can use like an AI agent kind of version of that you can use specifically to do different things. And then you can combine that with crypto in the sense that you can actually give the AI agent a wallet. Maybe if you give it some like, maybe, I don't know how much, but you give it some crypto and it could actually, because it's an agent, it can actually do whatever it wants with it, which means it could decide to maybe fund something or maybe like spend it on or hire somebody. Like I think we'll see some interesting stuff this year on that as well, but that'll be a little slower. But people are starting to work on that. People are starting to build around that. But in terms of actual impact, I think the stablecoin thing and the physical infrastructure thing is going to be like really, really interesting.
So as you know, our main thing is educating beginners around cryptocurrency and the world around it. So we'd like to know, what piece of advice would you give someone just starting to explore crypto beyond just the buying, holding, and trading?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, one, don't be afraid. Two, learn about the tech, because honestly, and obviously this is my opinion, but none of the coin stuff and the trading stuff matters if you don't understand the tech. So understand the tech as much as possible. Go back to the basics, like the early stuff. For me, I think I learned the most from he was kind of a educator named Andreas Antonopoulos. He's an OG. I learned a lot from him, and I would say for everybody, go back and watch a lot of his stuff or read a lot of his stuff. He has a few books as well. And that goes, again, deep into the tech. So, and people who know me know I'm a nerd when it comes to all this. I care about the tech more than anything else. But I think it also, even if you're not that interested in it, it helps you understand so much more. And even if you are a trader, you can't be a good trader if you don't understand the tech around it.
So once again, Stefan, we just like to thank you for joining us this evening and enlightening us about consumer crypto, about Oasis on Chain. What we'd like to know is, where can our listeners learn more about Oasis on Chain and stay updated about your future projects?
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me. I'm Stefen Deleveaux pretty much everywhere, or Stef Delev on a few other places, like Twitter, for example. You can also follow like Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, like our YouTube page, for example, still has some of the webinars. Oasis on Chain for sure. Oasisonchain.xyz is our website. You can follow that. You can follow Oasis's Twitter as well. We'd love to have y'all at the next one.
And we'd definitely love to be there. So once again, thank you to everyone for viewing this episode. If you would like to learn more about Stefan, following on his various social media platforms. If you have any suggestions for episodes that you would like us at CryptoNoobz to do, you could always email us at CryptoNoobz.edu at social medias, including CryptoNoobz, and on Facebook and LinkedIn, or CryptoNoobz.edu on Instagram and Twitter, or X. So that's it for tonight's episode. We'll see you on the next one.
Awesome.
All right. So as I end, I want you guys to just stay on for just a little bit longer, okay?
For it to upload, right?
Yeah.